A cold night's miracle. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness echo through time, reshaping our fate in ways we could never imagine. It was an icy winter night in Aspen, Colorado, when 16-year-old Emily Anderson heard a faint cry hidden deep within a raging snowstorm. Heart pounding, she approached cautiously, discovering a tiny bobcat kitten trembling, its golden-gray fur dusted with snow, eyes pleading desperately for help. Emily didn't know it yet, but rescuing this helpless creature would set in motion events that would echo through her life for years, until a decade later, when their roles would astonishingly reverse, and the very same bobcat would emerge from the shadows to save Emily's life in return. Lost in the snow. A blizzard in Aspen. The winter of 2013 had come early and fiercely to Aspen, Colorado. The picturesque mountain town, known for its cozy cabins and scenic ski resorts, was now buried beneath thick layers of snow. The usually bustling streets were eerily quiet, illuminated only by the soft glow of streetlights reflecting off fresh drifts that were piling higher with every passing minute. Emily Anderson, a bright-eyed 16-year-old with soft blonde hair cascading down from beneath her knitted white hat, hurried home through the storm. Her vivid blue eyes squinted against the relentless swirl of snowflakes, and her small figure was wrapped snugly in a heavy red winter coat. Emily's breaths formed clouds in the icy air as she carefully navigated the familiar yet nearly unrecognizable path toward home. Earlier that evening, Emily had been helping her parents close up their family-owned souvenir shop, nestled right in the heart of town. It had been a slow day, the blizzard driving tourists and locals alike indoors. She had insisted her parents head home first, offering to lock up and follow shortly after, assuring them she'd be fine making the short trek alone. Now, she questioned that decision as the wind howled louder, whipping around her legs and tugging at her scarf. The snowstorm had intensified rapidly, and visibility was reduced to almost nothing. The snow crunched beneath her boots, deep and fresh, making every step a small battle against the cold. Emily paused for a moment, shivering despite her layers. A sense of unease crept over her, something felt off, though she couldn't quite pinpoint what. Just as she started moving again, a faint, barely perceptible sound drifted toward her ears, nearly swallowed by the storm. She stopped, head tilted, straining to catch the noise again. For a brief second, there was only silence, then it came again, a high-pitched, desperate cry, delicate yet unmistakable, slicing through the heavy curtain of snow. Curiosity mixed with immediate concern surged through Emily, pushing her fears aside. She knew she couldn't ignore whatever was making that heartbreaking sound. Following the noise cautiously, she stepped away from the street, moving toward a snow-covered cluster of evergreen bushes near the edge of the sidewalk. Each step closer brought the sound into clearer focus, soft yet urgent, vulnerable yet full of life. Her heart quickened as she knelt down, brushing snow away gently with gloved hands. Beneath the branches, hidden in a small, protective nook, Emily's eyes widened in shock and awe at what she saw. There, shaking violently from the intense cold, was a tiny wildcat cub, an infant bobcat, its fur a beautiful mixture of soft golden-gray tones marked with striking black spots. The small creature looked up at her, eyes wide with fear and desperation, its weak mews barely audible against the relentless howl of the storm. In that instant, Emily knew exactly what she had to do. Discovering the baby wildcat. Emily's heart raced as she gently moved aside the snow-laden branches, revealing more clearly the tiny bobcat cub trembling beneath. Its small body was curled into a tight ball, paws tucked beneath a delicate chin. Its eyes, a mesmerizing pale green, stared up at Emily, glazed over with exhaustion and confusion. Emily felt a rush of compassion so strong it brought tears to her eyes. The fragile creature was clearly on the verge of succumbing to the bitter cold. "Oh, you poor little thing," Emily whispered softly, hoping not to frighten the tiny wildcat further. The cub's fur, dense, yet dampened and icy, was an exquisite blend of gold, gray, and speckled black, making it almost invisible against the snowy landscape. Its tiny pink nose quivered slightly with each labored breath, evidence of the struggle it had endured during the relentless storm. Emily knew that leaving the cub here meant certain death. Acting quickly, she removed her thick, woolen scarf and carefully wrapped it around the small creature, creating a warm, protective cocoon. As she lifted it gently into her arms, the bobcat mewed faintly, barely audible above the wind, and nestled instinctively against her chest, seeking warmth. Cradling the tiny cub securely, Emily began retracing her steps toward home, her mind racing with worry. How did a bobcat kitten end up alone in the middle of Aspen? Had something happened to its mother? She had read enough about wildlife in school to know that wild animals rarely abandon their young without dire circumstances. Each step back through the swirling blizzard felt like a battle against the relentless wind and snow. The streets remained deserted, with only dim streetlights guiding her through the ghostly whiteness. The cold bit into her cheeks, numbing them, but she hardly noticed. Her focus was entirely on keeping the bobcat safe and warm. After what felt like an eternity, Emily reached the familiar wooden porch of her family's cozy two-story home. Pushing through the heavy oak door into the warmth of the house, she sighed in relief. Her parents, startled by her abrupt entrance, turned to greet her, their expressions quickly shifting from confusion to astonishment at the sight of the tiny, bundled creature in Emily's arms. "Emily, what on earth did you find?" her mother asked softly, approaching with cautious curiosity. "It's a bobcat cub. It was freezing and alone, I had to help it," Emily explained quickly, her voice filled with urgency and determination. Her father stepped closer, peering into the scarf with wide eyes. "Well," he finally said, exchanging a concerned glance with her mother, "we'd better try to keep it alive until morning, and then we'll figure out what to do." Emily nodded gratefully, holding the tiny bobcat closer. She knew this was only the beginning, but at least for tonight, the helpless creature was safe. Bonding hearts. Caring for little Leo. The Anderson family's living room soon transformed into a makeshift refuge as they worked tirelessly to nurse the small bobcat cub back to health. Emily gently laid the tiny creature down on a soft blanket near the fireplace, watching anxiously as the warmth slowly enveloped its trembling body. Within moments, the bobcat seemed to relax, stretching out its little paws as it let out a faint, contented sigh. "Leo," Emily whispered gently, smiling as she stroked its soft, golden-gray fur. The name had popped into her mind spontaneously, somehow perfect for the courageous little survivor who had endured such a harrowing ordeal. Leo's eyes blinked slowly, already forming a bond of trust with the young girl who had rescued him from certain death. In the early hours of the morning, Emily remained at Leo's side, carefully offering him warmed goat's milk from an eyedropper. Initially hesitant, the cub soon accepted nourishment, tiny mouth eagerly consuming the life-giving liquid. Emily felt a surge of relief wash over her. Leo's survival no longer seemed impossible but rather within reach. Her parents, Mark and Laura Anderson, both in their early 40s, watched Emily's dedication with cautious admiration. Mark, a tall man with short dark hair flecked with gray, expressed reservations about harboring a wild animal. He knew well the complexities of caring for wildlife, particularly a predator species. Laura, however, moved by Emily's compassion and determination, gently advocated on their daughter's behalf. "Emily's clearly saving its life," Laura whispered to her husband. "Let's just give her a few days before we contact wildlife rescue. She deserves at least that much." Despite his initial concerns, Mark nodded in reluctant agreement, acknowledging Emily's strong bond with the tiny cub. Their daughter had always possessed a deep empathy for animals, a trait that defined her gentle nature. Over the next several days, Emily devoted every free moment to Leo. Each morning before school, she carefully fed him, noting with excitement how he gained strength and became more alert each passing hour. Leo grew more comfortable around her, frequently rubbing his small head against her hand or purring softly when she approached. Though he remained cautious around others, Leo recognized Emily's scent and voice, responding eagerly whenever she entered the room. Evenings in the Anderson household took on a new routine. Emily diligently researched bobcat care, learning about their dietary needs, behavior, and natural habitats. Her parents watched their daughter grow more responsible and confident, surprised at how seamlessly she balanced her schoolwork and the added responsibility of Leo's care. But beneath this growing bond was the quiet, persistent reality that Leo, despite all their efforts, remained a wild animal whose rightful place was not within the warmth and security of their home, but in the expansive Colorado wilderness. As days turned to weeks, Leo grew visibly stronger. He began exploring, his playful antics bringing laughter and joy to the Anderson family. Yet, Emily knew, deep down, that the toughest decision of all still lay ahead, the heartbreaking inevitability of saying goodbye. Growing together. Weeks stretched into months, and Leo quickly outgrew his initial fragility, thriving under Emily's tender care. What was once a weak, trembling kitten now transformed into an energetic, playful bobcat cub. His golden-gray fur became thicker, more vibrant, and the dark spots that patterned his coat grew more pronounced, making him both striking and unmistakably wild. Leo's sharp, emerald-green eyes sparkled with intelligence and curiosity, reflecting the deep bond he had forged with Emily. Emily marveled daily at Leo's rapid growth. She watched him develop from a timid kitten that fit comfortably in her palms into a powerful young bobcat whose lean, muscular body now measured nearly 3 feet from nose to tail tip. His paws had grown impressively large, hinting at the strong predator he was destined to become. Despite his wild nature, Leo remained gentle and affectionate with Emily, following her around the house, often curling at her feet as she studied or completed homework. Her parents watched in quiet amazement, still wary but undeniably touched by the unique connection between their daughter and this wild animal. Emily's father, Mark, however, recognized the approaching dilemma. Leo was no longer just a helpless infant in need of rescue, he was swiftly maturing into a wild animal who deserved the freedom of his natural habitat. One chilly spring evening, Mark approached Emily as she sat near the fireplace, gently stroking Leo's thick fur while the young bobcat purred softly. "Emily, you've done an incredible job," he began carefully, choosing his words with gentle precision. "But we both know Leo can't stay with us forever. He's growing fast, and soon he'll need more space, more freedom." Emily's heart sank, though she knew her father was right. She had tried to push away the thought of letting Leo go, focusing instead on their happy moments together. Yet, hearing the words spoken aloud made the reality unavoidable. "I know, Dad," Emily admitted quietly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But how can I let him go? What if something happens to him?" Mark knelt beside his daughter, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You've given him the best possible start, Emily. But Leo belongs in the wild. Keeping him here would only deny him the life he deserves. It's the kindest thing you can do." As tears finally spilled down her cheeks, Emily gazed at Leo, who seemed to sense her distress, gently pressing his head into her hand. She realized that love meant putting Leo's needs above her own desires, no matter how painful that choice might be. The following weeks became a bittersweet countdown. Emily spent countless hours preparing Leo for his inevitable return to the wild, reducing his reliance on her, allowing him greater independence. The young bobcat adapted quickly, instinctively sharpening his natural hunting skills. Yet, every step toward his independence felt like a step further away from the bond Emily cherished deeply. She knew, however, the day would soon come when she'd have to say a final goodbye, a goodbye that would shape both their futures in ways neither could have ever imagined. The bittersweet farewell, letting go. The morning Emily had dreaded finally arrived, a clear but cold spring day, the sun rising slowly over the majestic peaks surrounding Aspen. She awoke early, a heavy ache settled deep in her chest. Leo seemed to sense the change, his behavior unusually calm as if he understood the gravity of the moment they now faced together. Mark and Laura stood quietly by, watching Emily prepare Leo for the journey into White River National Forest, a vast, protected wilderness area ideal for a young bobcat's return to nature. Emily packed a small backpack with some essentials, water, snacks, a map, and a camera, hoping to capture one final memory of Leo before their paths inevitably parted. Leo paced softly at her feet, occasionally brushing against her legs with his thick coat of rich golden-gray fur. His eyes, vibrant and sharp as ever, watched Emily closely, their depth reflecting the trust and companionship they had shared over the months. Emily knelt beside him, gently scratching behind his tufted ears. "I'll miss you so much, Leo," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. The young bobcat pressed his head affectionately into her palm, his gentle purring seeming louder than usual. The drive to the forest was quiet, heavy with unspoken emotion. Upon reaching the trailhead, Emily stepped out into the crisp morning air, breathing deeply to steady herself. The vast, endless expanse of trees spread before them, their branches rustling softly in the wind, beckoning Leo back to the world from which he came. Mark and Laura kept their distance, giving Emily space to say goodbye privately. Emily knelt once more beside Leo, fighting back tears that threatened to overflow. The bobcat regarded her steadily, sensing the finality of the moment. "You have to be strong now," Emily murmured, gently cupping Leo's face. "You belong out there, free to roam and live the way nature intended. But please never forget me, I know I won't ever forget you." Leo seemed to listen intently, his gaze unwavering. After a lingering moment, Emily stepped back reluctantly. Leo took a cautious step toward the edge of the clearing, pausing briefly to look back at the girl who had saved his life. "Go on, Leo. Be brave," Emily whispered softly, tears now openly streaming down her cheeks. With one final glance, Leo bounded forward, slipping gracefully into the dense forest. Emily watched until his golden-gray coat blended into the shadows, disappearing entirely from view. A profound emptiness washed over her, leaving behind a sadness that felt almost overwhelming. Yet beneath that grief lay a quiet strength born from the knowledge that she had done the right thing. Turning slowly away from the forest, Emily knew she was leaving a part of her heart behind. But somewhere deep within, she also felt a quiet certainty: this was not the end of their story, merely the closing of one beautiful, unforgettable chapter. Years of memories. In the days following Leo's release, Emily often found herself gazing out the window toward the dense forest surrounding Aspen, her thoughts lingering on the beautiful bobcat she had raised from a helpless infant. Every rustle of leaves or soft movement among the trees would stir hope within her. Perhaps Leo had returned, if only to quietly check on her. But as weeks turned into months, reality slowly settled over her heart, tempering those hopes into gentle acceptance. Time moved steadily forward, and Emily grew into adulthood, shaped profoundly by her experience with Leo. She was now 26 years old, her golden blonde hair longer, framing a face matured with quiet confidence. Her bright blue eyes still carried a warmth and compassion that often reminded her parents of the gentle-hearted teenager who had rescued Leo from the snowstorm all those years ago. Emily's passion for wildlife and nature only deepened over time, guiding her toward a career as an eco-tour guide in the Colorado mountains. Her daily life revolved around leading groups of tourists and nature enthusiasts through the scenic trails of Aspen and nearby White River National Forest. Each hike, every sighting of wildlife, a graceful deer, a majestic eagle, brought flashes of memories flooding back, especially those quiet, cherished moments she once shared with Leo. One afternoon, guiding a group along a wooded trail near the place she'd released Leo, Emily paused by a familiar cluster of evergreen bushes. A tender smile crossed her face as she vividly recalled that fateful night she'd found the tiny shivering cub hidden beneath these same branches. Her heart swelled at the bittersweet memory. "I once found a baby bobcat here," she shared softly with the group, her voice warm with nostalgia. "He was almost frozen, abandoned and helpless, but he grew strong again. We shared something special, a friendship I never could have imagined." The hikers listened in captivated silence, touched by the sincerity and depth of her story. Emily often wondered privately if Leo had survived the challenges of life in the wild, if he had thrived or had a family of his own. Her dreams were often filled with visions of the bobcat, healthy and strong, moving gracefully through the forest with the confidence she had hoped he would find. Occasionally, she would discover subtle yet intriguing signs in her daily hikes, a distinctive paw print in soft earth, tufts of familiar golden-gray fur caught on low branches, even a half-eaten carcass of prey indicative of a bobcat's precise hunting skill. Each clue gently fueled her belief that Leo was still out there, somewhere close enough to sense her presence, perhaps watching from afar. These small signs offered her quiet comfort. Though years had passed since she had last seen Leo, Emily still carried their memories close to her heart, unaware that destiny was patiently preparing to intertwine their paths once again, this time, in a way she could never foresee. Reunion in the darkness, unexpected danger. 10 years after the unforgettable night she had found Leo, Emily set out on a crisp winter morning in early 2023, guiding a group of hikers through the familiar trails of White River National Forest. Now 26 years old, she had become an experienced eco-tour guide, known locally for her passion and knowledge about the wildlife and landscapes of Colorado. Today's journey was one she'd made countless times before, but the snowy forest held secrets, and Emily had no idea what awaited her. Dressed warmly in a navy blue insulated jacket, sturdy hiking boots, and a knitted gray hat pulled snugly over her golden blonde hair, Emily confidently led the group through winding paths lined by towering pine trees. She expertly narrated stories about local wildlife, pausing occasionally to point out animal tracks in the freshly fallen snow. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and hikers often marveled at her ability to notice subtle clues hidden in the wilderness. As afternoon shadows lengthened and the sun dipped lower behind the mountains, Emily decided to take a shortcut along a narrow ridge trail, a path she had traversed safely numerous times. But nature is unpredictable, especially in winter, and today fate would deal an unexpected blow. Halfway along the ridge, the snow beneath Emily's boots suddenly shifted without warning. In a heartbeat, the ground gave way, sending her tumbling down a steep embankment. A startled cry escaped her lips as she crashed painfully through icy branches and rocks, finally landing hard in a narrow, rocky ravine several feet below. A sharp pain shot through her left leg, and for a moment, Emily was too stunned to move. Gritting her teeth against the pain, Emily slowly tried to sit up, immediately realizing her leg was wedged tightly between two large rocks. Panic surged through her veins as she struggled in vain to free herself, each movement intensifying her agony. From above, she faintly heard frantic voices of the hikers, their distant calls barely audible. Emily called back desperately, her voice echoing through the ravine, but soon the silence returned, deepening her fear that help might not reach her in time. As daylight quickly faded, temperatures plunged dramatically. Emily's breath formed thick, misty clouds in the freezing air. Her heartbeat quickened, anxiety mixing with the relentless pain. With trembling fingers, she tried reaching for her phone, only to find it shattered from the fall, utterly useless. She was trapped, alone, and the stark reality of her situation slowly settled in. Nightfall brought a penetrating, bitter cold, seeping relentlessly into her bones despite her warm clothing. Exhaustion and hopelessness began to creep into her thoughts. Emily shivered uncontrollably, tears of frustration and fear sliding silently down her cheeks. Memories flooded her mind, her parents, her warm home, and most vividly, Leo, the tiny bobcat cub she had saved from a snowstorm, who had grown up strong and free. Despairingly, she whispered into the night, "Leo, I wish you were here with me now," her voice carried away by the icy wind. She knew the odds were against her, trapped and injured in the heart of a freezing forest, unaware that somewhere nearby, watching silently from the shadows, familiar green eyes had already recognized her voice, and were quietly preparing to respond. Guardian Angel returns. As darkness deepened, the forest around Emily grew increasingly silent, broken only by the occasional rustle of branches in the bitterly cold wind. Emily felt exhaustion washing over her, struggling to remain awake, knowing the dangerous consequences of falling asleep in such freezing temperatures. Her thoughts wandered through fragments of memories, warm summer days spent exploring, the laughter of family meals, and the comforting purr of Leo curled peacefully by her side. These memories seemed both comforting and painfully distant now. Suddenly, Emily's drowsy state was shattered by a faint, unmistakable sound. Her heart leaped, instantly awake, straining to confirm what she'd heard. It came again, a low, cautious growl echoing softly from the darkness, followed by the quiet crunch of paws on snow-covered ground. Fear briefly surged within her, quickly replaced by astonishment as she sensed familiarity in those careful footsteps. "Leo," she whispered into the shadows, her voice trembling, uncertain if hope was tricking her exhausted mind. The steps paused momentarily, silence stretching out like a thin, fragile thread. Then, from the shadows of a nearby pine tree, two sharp, emerald-green eyes glowed softly, reflecting the faint moonlight filtering through the trees. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She felt the powerful rush of recognition sweep through her entire body. There, stepping carefully yet confidently toward her, was Leo, fully grown, a majestic bobcat whose muscular, graceful form radiated quiet strength. His thick golden-gray fur glistened beneath the soft glow of the moon, his black-spotted coat shimmering vividly. Time had transformed the fragile kitten she had once held protectively into a stunning, powerful wildcat, now standing proudly just a few feet away. Leo approached Emily cautiously, clearly sensing her vulnerability and distress. As he drew nearer, he gently nudged her shoulder with his nose, inhaling her familiar scent deeply. Emily reached out slowly, fingers trembling as they touched his thick, warm fur for the first time in a decade. Tears filled her eyes, falling silently down her cheeks as she softly whispered his name again. Leo responded instantly, pressing himself closer, offering his warmth and protection. Throughout the freezing night, Leo remained vigilantly by Emily's side, occasionally rising to pace protectively around her before returning, always gently pressing his body against her to share his warmth. His presence gave Emily renewed hope, an unspoken promise that she would survive this ordeal. The bobcat seemed aware of her injuries, careful to avoid causing additional pain as he nestled beside her. As dawn approached, the sound of distant voices pierced the cold morning air, the unmistakable calls of the rescue team finally nearing her location. Leo lifted his head, ears alert and twitching, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the approaching strangers. Emily's voice, weakened but relieved, called out clearly toward the rescuers, guiding them to her position. As flashlights appeared through the trees, Leo slowly stood, his gaze meeting Emily's one final time. Emily's heart ached with gratitude, realizing Leo had come back exactly when she needed him most. With quiet dignity, the bobcat retreated several paces, pausing briefly to glance at Emily, his eyes glowing with gentle affection. Then, silently, Leo melted into the forest once again, leaving Emily safe and filled with a profound awe. She had saved Leo's life all those years ago, and tonight, in an act of loyalty and love, he had saved hers in return. The miracle that touched hearts, rescued at dawn. As dawn gently broke over White River National Forest, a soft, golden light spilled through the trees, illuminating the snowy ground in hues of pink and amber. Emily's breath rose slowly in faint wisps, still visible in the crisp morning air. Though she was exhausted, cold, and aching, the sight of approaching rescuers sent relief surging through her veins, filling her with renewed energy. "Over here," Emily called weakly but determinedly, waving one hand toward the voices and beams of light filtering through the trees. Her voice cracked slightly, yet remained strong enough to guide the rescuers to her precise location. In moments, the rescue team emerged from between the towering pines, 2 men and 1 woman dressed in reflective orange jackets, heavy boots, and carrying emergency gear. Their faces showed relief upon spotting Emily, quickly shifting to astonishment as they reached her side. "Emily Anderson," the woman asked, kneeling quickly next to her, her tone calm yet filled with urgency and compassion. Emily nodded weakly, trying to sit up despite the sharp pain in her trapped leg. "Don't move, we've got you," one of the men reassured gently, assessing her injury. "Looks like you've been here all night. You're incredibly lucky." "You don't know the half of it," Emily replied softly, her voice tinged with lingering awe and wonder. "I had help, Leo came back." The rescuers exchanged puzzled glances. The woman, whose name tag read Sarah, carefully checked Emily's vitals, making notes of her condition. Leo? Is someone else here? Emily shook her head gently, eyes moistening with emotion. Not someone, a bobcat I rescued as a kitten 10 years ago. He found me here last night, stayed close and kept me warm. Without him, I don't know if I would have made it. Sarah paused, looking briefly skeptical before noticing the clear paw prints encircling Emily's position. Her eyes widened in amazement. You're serious? These tracks are fresh bobcat prints. Emily smiled softly, despite the exhaustion and pain. Leo knew I needed him. He was watching over me all this time. As the rescuers gently freed her trapped leg, Emily winced in pain but felt immense gratitude. Carefully, they secured her to a portable stretcher, wrapping heavy, insulating blankets around her chilled body. Sarah stayed close, frequently reassuring her as the group began making their way slowly toward the trailhead. Sunlight gradually bathed the forest, the snow sparkling brilliantly around them. As Emily glanced back once more at the ravine that had almost claimed her life, she felt tears trickling slowly down her face, not from sorrow, but from profound gratitude and amazement. Somewhere out there, hidden again among the shadows of the wilderness, Leo watched silently, having fulfilled the debt of love and loyalty he'd carried for years. Upon reaching the waiting ambulance near the trailhead, Emily's parents were already anxiously waiting, their faces filled with relief and joy as they rushed forward to embrace their daughter carefully. "We were so worried, Emily," her mother whispered, fighting tears of her own. "We thought we might have lost you." Emily embraced her parents tightly, her voice shaking with emotion yet carrying deep conviction as she replied softly, "Leo saved me, Mom. He came back when I needed him most." Her father nodded slowly, eyes filled with quiet pride and astonishment. Maybe Leo was just repaying the favor. "You saved him all those years ago, now he's returned the kindness." Emily leaned back gently, smiling warmly despite the lingering pain. She knew her father was right, yet this incredible moment felt like more than repayment. It was a testament to the unbreakable bond formed through love, kindness, and destiny itself. A story of inspiration. In the days that followed her rescue, Emily's remarkable story began to spread, first among the local community, then across Colorado, and soon throughout the entire country. News outlets picked up the tale of the bobcat who returned after 10 years to save the girl who once saved him. Headlines read like something out of a fairy tale: "Wildcat hero returns, Bobcat's loyalty stuns wildlife experts," and "A decade-old bond that defied nature." As she recovered from her injuries at home, Emily found herself flooded with interview requests, messages from strangers, and overwhelming support. People were deeply moved, not just by the dramatic rescue, but by the idea that a wild creature could carry such a powerful connection across the years. The footage from the rescue team, including photographs of the paw prints and the warmth Emily described, lent further credibility to a story that might have otherwise sounded too incredible to believe. Sitting on her front porch with her legs still in a brace, Emily addressed a small group of local reporters, speaking humbly into the cluster of microphones before her. "I never imagined Leo would remember me," she said, voice soft but steady. "Let alone return to save my life. But I do believe that the connection we build with animals, with nature itself, isn't something that ever really disappears. It's still there, quiet, waiting, watching." The video of her brief speech went viral overnight. Wildlife conservation groups, school teachers, and even national park rangers reached out to her, asking her to share her experience with students, hikers, and conservation volunteers. Emily, never one to seek attention, quickly realized this moment could become more than just a personal miracle, it could be a call to action. Using the momentum, she began working with a local wildlife preservation group, advocating for increased education around human-wildlife coexistence. Her first-hand story became a powerful symbol of what empathy, respect, and responsibility could look like when extended to the natural world. She also launched a social media page titled Leo's Legacy, where she shared lessons from her hikes, conservation tips, and the continued efforts to protect bobcats and other wild animals in the Colorado wilderness. The page attracted thousands of followers within weeks, with people of all ages writing messages like, "You made me believe in something again," and "I'll never look at wildlife the same way." Emily never tried to commercialize the experience. For her, Leo's return wasn't a viral moment, it was a sacred reminder that even in a world full of noise and speed, the quiet acts of love and compassion we show, especially to the voiceless, can ripple through time in ways we may never fully comprehend. Leo had vanished back into the forest, but his presence had lit a fire in Emily and in everyone who heard their story. A fire of hope, reverence, and responsibility that would not go out. Life after reunion. Months passed after the miraculous reunion, but the mark Leo left on Emily's life only deepened with time. No longer just a wilderness guide, she had become a voice, clear, compassionate, and grounded, for wildlife conservation throughout Colorado and beyond. Her life took on new purpose, shaped by the quiet pawprints left on her heart. Emily's daily routine now began not with silent hikes alone, but with emails from classrooms asking her to speak, invitations from wildlife foundations, and volunteers hoping to join her on educational treks. Her mornings were often spent crafting materials for school visits or recording videos for her growing online community on Leo's legacy. Her afternoons were still dedicated to the trails, though. She never abandoned the forest that had given her so much. If anything, her connection to it had grown stronger. On a clear morning in late summer, Emily set out once again along the path near the ravine where Leo had rescued her. This time, however, she wasn't just a hiker, she was a mentor. A small group of local teens followed close behind, each one curious, energetic, and eager to learn. She paused at a familiar clearing, turned to the group, and said, "This is where Leo stood the last time I saw him. Right there. He didn't just save my life that night, he changed it." The teens fell silent, reverent. One of them, a boy about 14 with tousled dark hair, whispered, "Do you think he's still out there?" Emily smiled gently. "I don't know. Maybe. But even if he's not, his spirit is. Every time we treat the land with respect, every time we choose kindness toward animals, we carry him with us." Back at home, her parents had converted a small portion of their land into a wildlife education center, nothing grand, just a few modest cabins, a barn repurposed as a learning space, and trails that allowed guests to interact safely with nature. They named it Leo's Crossing. Visitors came from all over to walk the same woods, hear Emily's story, and understand the delicate thread that connects humans and animals. Emily's life, once shaped by that chance encounter in a snowstorm, now revolved around something far greater than herself. The girl who once nursed a wild bobcat by the fireplace had grown into a woman who taught others how to protect the wild, not out of fear, but out of love. And every now and then, on quiet mornings, she would spot a shadow moving through the trees, just out of reach. A flick of golden-gray fur. A glimpse of green eyes watching from afar. She never chased it. She simply smiled and whispered, "Thank you." The legacy of Leo. In the year that followed her rescue, Emily did something she had dreamed about ever since Leo disappeared into the forest that first time. She founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting wildcats and promoting ethical coexistence between humans and wildlife. She named it Leo's Heart. Located in a small cabin-turned office just outside of Aspen, Leo's Heart began with humble goals: to fund local rescue efforts, offer educational workshops, and support wildlife corridors for bobcats and other native species. But the story behind its name carried such emotional weight that people, individuals, businesses, schools, were eager to support it. Donations flowed in. Volunteers signed up in droves. Soon, Emily was speaking at wildlife conferences across the country, telling her story not to inspire sympathy, but to spark action. "Leo didn't save my life to make headlines," she would say. "He did it because we once saw each other, not as human and wildcat, but as two lives connected in a storm. If we can hold on to that kind of understanding, imagine what kind of world we can build. Emily's face became familiar not only to hikers and conservationists but to a new generation of children who grew up hearing about Leo in classrooms and picture books. Artists painted murals of the wildcat and the girl, their silhouettes bathed in moonlight beneath snow-covered pines. A documentary crew even began filming her journey, determined to capture the emotional layers of a story that had become more legend than memory. Despite her growing influence, Emily remained grounded. She still led hikes. Still taught classes. Still returned often to the forest alone, walking the same path she had once taken with Leo trailing behind her. She no longer cried when she visited the ravine, at least not in sorrow. What she felt now was gratitude. Profound, enduring gratitude. On the 10th anniversary of Leo's rescue, this time marking the day he had saved her, Emily organized a candlelight walk through the woods for her community. Hundreds attended, carrying lanterns and flashlights, forming a glowing ribbon that wove through the trees. At the clearing, Emily stood quietly before speaking. "I don't know where Leo is," she said, voice steady. "But I know where he'll always be. Here, in these woods. In my heart. And in the work we do every day to protect creatures like him." The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then a soft, distant sound stirred in the trees, too far away to see, but close enough to feel. Emily looked up, her eyes shining. "Good night, Leo," she whispered. And deep within the forest, the wind carried the answer. The story of Emily and Leo isn't just about a girl and a wildcat, it's about what happens when we choose compassion over convenience, and empathy over indifference. In the smallest moments, like stopping to help a trembling creature in the snow, we shape the deepest truths of who we are. And sometimes, those moments return to us in ways we never expect. In your own life, you might never rescue a bobcat. But you will have opportunities to notice, to care, to protect something fragile, whether it's a person, an animal, or a piece of nature we so often take for granted. At Paw Prints and Stories, we believe these connections matter. That every story, every paw print, leaves a mark worth remembering. If this story moved you, stay with us, there's more to explore, more hearts to touch, and more stories that remind us what it means to care. Now, here's your challenge, this week, find one quiet way to give back to the natural world. Plant something. Pick up litter. Support a rescue. Or simply pay attention. Because just like Leo remembered Emily, the wild remembers kindness. And kindness, once given, never truly disappears.